as far back as I can remember. I always knew I deserved to be dead.
Welcome back. Make yourself comfortable. Or, if you're just joining us, hello. I hope you're having a good day. Once upon a time, I was having a good day. Then this show stole my innocence and purity. Before we begin, I must ask that you consider watching the series before this analysis. Everything I mention will be fairly out of context if you haven't seen the episode. This is not intended to be a video summary of the show, but more of discussion of hidden details and underlying themes. Here we go. In the main theme song, the duck is shown briefly with pink paint, foreshadowing for everyone's lovable friend, Stain Edwards, the forever boy. Yellow calls himself a pig, which is pretty hilarious, but also tells me it's possible the other characters could be unreliable narrators when describing themselves in this scene. If you look closely at the wall, you will find the clock from the original series is looming over everything. You can see him throughout this entire episode, but he never really interacts with the characters, which is likely for the best. Yellow blankly staring into space with his mouth hanging open is me, all of the time. The newspaper reads, Opinion, which is easy to spot, but if you look closer at the bottom for the split second the newspaper is on screen, you can also read Worm Fired for Harassment. This show has a lot of interconnected parts and a ton of foreshadowing, which is one of the many reasons why I love it.
How did you die?
I forgot to drink water.
The duck died from not drinking water. This was, frankly, more effective than 1,000 social media posts telling me to drink more water. And I think we should have more subliminal messaging intended to help mentally ill people. Yellow has a D on his shirt, and while I think the current ideas surrounding that detail don't really have enough backing to be proven correct, I'm still going to go over them, so I'm still pointing it out. This episode is one of the strangest in the entire series, if only because Duck is dead and yet continues to walk and talk and be 30 feet tall. He is dead, but it doesn't faze him or anyone else. After learning he has died, the duck stands up to get into his Sunday best, but as he does, his heart drops out of his body. Yellow laughs and says, "You laid an egg. Make a wish." But faintly in the background, you can hear Red say, "Ew, did that fall out of your anus?" The heart rolls across the floor and is absorbed into the floorboards in a really cool homage to the original Hellraiser movie. I wouldn't be surprised if after the coffin gets broken later, Cenobites come and take him away to discover his pleasure. As the eerie music builds to a crescendo, the coffin comes to life. And he is somehow kind of the kindest teacher in the entire series. He actually tries to be helpful. The TV has a fun Wallace and Gromit reference, and I always thought Wallace and Gromit animations were incredible, but also like very strange to watch. Anytime I see them, it feels mildly creepy, and it feels like a perfect reference for DHMIS to make. Now, you remember 15 seconds ago when I stated that this teacher is the most helpful? Now I must tarnish that memory, because while he is generally nice enough, pay close attention to his body language and what he actually says this episode. He approaches the funeral with a step-by-step process that he tries to move along at all costs. He doesn't care at all about any of this. This is just another day for him. This callousness seems to represent the greater industry of funerals and memorials and empty words from people who don't really care. And how could they? They don't even know the person. The coffin thinks Yellow died at first, then is corrected and realizes it's the duck.
Look at that! I've been given a wreath!
I think this further shows the coffin is putting on a facade of understanding, when in reality, he is just doing his job. Which makes sense, and when I think about it, that making people involved feel comfortable and understood is probably an important part of his job anyway. There's a symbol in the ID drawer here, and the ID card says Red eventually dies in a lake, which doesn't happen in this series but might be giving us a clue for later. Fingers crossed for another freaking season. The coffin says they have no money. It's not a secret or anything, I just thought it was relatable. And 1 like on this video equals 1 slice of bread for my children pictured here. The calendar says June 19th, which not only seems to show that this episode is before Jobs in terms of continuity, but also that it could take place sometime during the original 6 episodes. Either that or this could mean the duck will always die on the 19th. This picture has the date June 19th, 55. Now, a lot of people online have been really mean to Red about his teeth. And I just want to say, as they should. What the hell is this? Is there anything in my life that wasn't a lie? This bottle of soap reads, Barry's Bubbles. This whole song devolving into a recipe for shepherd's pie before they realize they're supposed to be at a funeral is so hilarious, I think I died laughing. I wonder if the shepherd's pie makes anything turn gray. is spelled onion. I wonder if Duck having his insides removed is a reference to the health episode when he gets his organs ripped out by a giant can. We'll never know. The Tombstone says David, and this whole bit where the duck thinks the rock's name is David, and then the coffin's like, no, that's supposed to be your name, was so funny I ended up deceased. But wait! The yellow guy has a D on his shirt, and the coffin thought he had died. So could this mean yellow guy is really the dead one, and his name is David? When I watched this, I thought David being on the tomb was intended to kind of troll fans. They made you think you were finally going to discover the duck's name, only for it to not be his actual name. When they play his nonsense best moments, they show him shaking a human hand. Duck is also seen here eating the food they later give to Stain Edwards the Forever Boy. Then he's fighting in a war, and his plane has a hidden rune. Everyone returns home, and the real thematic elements of the episode start kicking in. The room is visibly darker without their friend's presence. Red says that they never liked him anyway, and reveals to the audience Duck used to bite Yellow. I wonder if this was before or after the events of the health episode. Here we meet Thomas the Tank Engine as a tissue box and the Mourners. These people don't even know Duck. They don't know his name, yet they pretend to understand the grief the main characters are going through. This box says squared. Just thought that was funny. Inside the goodie bag is an egg that hopefully doesn't Inside the goodie bag is an egg that hopefully doesn't contain any pesky bees, and a kit to make a new friend. I believe that the lamp's speech here can be interpreted a few different ways. Yellow asks what happens when we die, and the lamp, with a different voice and demeanor from the original show, responds with some commonly held ideas about heaven and reincarnation. But then he says, something tells me when we die, we go into the center of the earth. Well, it's not quite the center. It's in between the core and the surface. And we must relive our lives, but as a performance for a new super race known as the Council. And every time you get it right, you get a pound. When I first saw this episode, I thought this was intended to be a joke about the absurdity of religion. It made me think of Scientology specifically, but any overly detailed afterlife story used by a cult with exploitive intentions will do. But upon rewatching, I've changed my initial interpretation. Is it possible that the Council is us viewers watching the show? And what about the coin Duck gets at the end of Jobs? Is that just a coincidence, or is that tie in here? The lamp might have revealed all the lore of the show in a one-off joke. It's also strange how the lamp says some of us get reincarnated as our favorite object. This could possibly mean that real teachers died and were reincarnated as the objects in the show that come to life. I have no idea, but it's interesting just to think about it. Random disclaimer. That's the case for most of my interpretations I'll discuss in any of these videos. I can point out visible and obvious stuff and say, hey, that's interesting, but anything deeper than that with a show like this will always be just my own speculation. Anyways.
He looks fun, and he's got his own catchphrase.
Pineapple.
That can't be right.
Pineapple is good on chocolate worms.
He's too opinionated.
This made me want Jack Stauber to collaborate with dhmis. It would be the pinnacle of terror. Oh, claymation. How dare you? Do you really believe that they animate the clay one frame at a time? They're not masochists. They use black magic to make the clay animate itself. Duck is making a mixtape underground. The music that he plays here to annoy the coffin is also the end credits music. This episode shows death from two different sides. How people on the outside process and go through grief, and how the person who's going to die comes to terms with the fear of the great unknown. Not everyone deals with death in the same way. And what's interesting to me is how the characters seem to go through the stages of grief backwards. They accept the duck is dead, get depressed about it, then they bargain by trying to get a new friend, get angry when he isn't like the old duck, then deny Duck even died by literally making him like the old one. There was one comment on Reddit that I didn't agree with 100%, but I thought it was one of the most interesting takes on this episode as a whole. From this user, what we have here is an episode that is a subversion of dhmis itself. This show is normally about subverting the education of an innocent topic by adding morbidity and surrealism. This episode flips that from the opening premise This topic is inherently morbid, yet the episode then proceeds to be the lightest and tamest episode of the series. We see this when Duck's heart falls out and does the whole Hellraiser sequence, only for a softly spoken coffin to pop up and apologize for such a disturbing entrance. In fact, the only psychopaths in this episode are the main cast themselves. The one nonsensicality is how the duck could be dead given how animate he is, but that is surrealism added by the main cast themselves rather than the others around them." End quote. Stain Edwards the Forever Boy says, "Some people think we're in a simulation, and I can't help but once again think that this show has some very genuine meta-commentary moments. I assume if you've been watching this show longer than a week, you've seen the countless theories surrounding the show's nature, and one of the most popular is the simulation theory. We are the people that think they are in the simulation.
You're supposed to say that the floor is too loud or the window is disrespecting you.
The show has given me some of the biggest laughs since the Inside outtakes dropped. Right around here, I took a second to really analyze this main room, and I want to point out the board game over here is called Money Win, probably a Monopoly parody, and this painting of the symbol for yin and yang, I found that very interesting. If you're unaware, that refers to a concept originating in ancient Chinese philosophy where opposite forces are seen as interconnected and counterbalancing. I actually feel kind of bad for poor Stain Edwards the Forever Boy. He is a character that tries to grow, change, and find purpose, but is instead molded into a replacement for the crow-like thing. These guys are really just terrible friends. A common complaint I've seen online about the new series is that the songs aren't as good, and really, I just can't with you guys sometimes. Memories is unironically amazing and freaking hilarious. They reminisce about the times they had with their friend, and then Yellow can't take Duck's absence anymore, and he goes outside to dig up his grave. In the original episode 2, Time, there was a portrait of a duck wearing a military outfit under their TV. He likely served his country. Yellow still has this rash on his back, which we saw here, but in terms of continuity, wait, no, don't show it again. No, cut! Stain Edwards the Forever Boy is molded by Red to become a new and improved duck. Reminds me a little of Carpenter's The Thing, actually, if The Thing was nice. Yellow dug the old one up, though. And here is another great example of this show flipping conventions and leading their viewers on, leading me on, to believe one thing is going to happen, only to then do something so completely out of left field that it's impossible for me to wrap my little tiny peanut brain around it. They make it seem like the original duck will kill Stain Edwards the Forever Boy, but then they all decide collectively that both the ducks can stay. The theme song plays, only this time they sing, "There's 4 of us," but suddenly one of the ducks uses the shovel to behead the other. And this leads us to a question a lot of people have been asking online. Who actually killed who? And there are a few clues. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure, but let's get into the clues. Based on where the characters are standing, I'd say it was the duck that dies. There's pink stuff around his picture in the theme song. He has maggots in his blood right here, just like the corpse in the coffin did. So based on the evidence in this episode, it seems Stain Edwards the Forever Boy replaced the duck. But later in the series, we are led to believe that at the end of every episode, it's like Groundhog Day. Everything is reset. Plus, you could also think about how the duck had his organs removed earlier, yet when this guy dies, his guts splatter everywhere. And also, I think this is particularly important too. We can hear a conversation in episode 6 that recontextualizes this entire encounter, but I'll come back to that in a later video. This ending credits song correlates to all the other episodes and is catchy as hell. The businessman is the briefcase, family man is the twins, choo-choo man is this vehicle, friendly fellow is Warren the eagle, plug-in man is Electracy. Each like on this video is another adventure that Stain Edwards the Forever Boy gets to go on. If you like weird media, or indie music, or a bunch of random nonsense, consider subscribing to the channel. And if this video gets to 500 likes, I'll continue on to episode 3. Actually, I'll probably continue the series regardless. This is just fun at this point. I am drowning. There is no sign of land. You are coming down with me, hand in unlovable hand. And I hope you die. I hope we both die.